As the war broke, he served, still as a Greek citizen, on a number of British battleships as a midshipman protecting convoys in the Indian Ocean, eventually being transferred to the Mediterranean Fleet in 1941. He continued his studies, eventually passing his exams by topping 4 out of 5 assessments. He participated in the Battle of Crete, the Battle of Cape Matapan, and graduated his ongoing studies to become one of the youngest first lieutenants in the history of the Royal Navy in 1942. Now transferred to a destroyer, escorting fleets around Britain, then supporting the Allied landings in Sicily, he was cited a number of times for decisive action and strategies that saved his ship from night bomber attacks. By 1944, he was transferred to the British Pacific Fleet, again in the thick of the action, and by 1945 was in Tokyo Bay at the signing of the Japanese surrender. By 1946, he was back in Portsmouth, where he was posted as an instructor at the Naval School. Now, while all this was going on, Philip was corresponding with then Princess Elizabeth, whom he had met whilst still a cadet at Naval College in 1939. During a royal visit, Prince Philip was asked by his uncle, Lord Mountbatten, to escort Elizabeth and Margaret around the college. Elizabeth, who was still only 13, developed a crush on the dashing and handsome young cadet, and as the war broke out, he also found some solace in corresponding with the only person in the world who seemed to take any interest in his welfare. By the end of the war, he and Elizabeth, now 19, had been corresponding for some years, and they developed a strong bond of affection. In 1946, Philip approached the king for permission to marry her, which was granted in 1947, when Elizabeth turned 21. But first it was necessary, under British law, that he renounce his Greek and Danish titles and become a naturalised British citizen, which he did, taking on his uncle's surname of Mountbatten. Philip's father had meanwhile died during the war, and with the Nazis plundering his home in Monaco, there was nothing left to inherit, and so, being stateless and without any personal landholdings, he was literally a prince and a pauper, which meant that at the renunciation of his titles, he was now no longer even a prince, just a mid-ranked foreign naval officer. Even his Greek Orthodox baptism had to be publicly regularized by the Archbishop of Canterbury, as though his previous Christian heritage was invalid, just so that he could be admitted to the Church of England in order to marry Elizabeth. And so this intensely private naval lieutenant left his whole history behind and married a princess in a ceremony in November of 1947, which was broadcast to hundreds of millions of viewers around the world. Given the recent war, none of his German relations, including his 3 surviving sisters, were invited to the wedding.